I found out my sister was secretly my stepmother because I saw her name on my father's will next to surviving spouse. My name is Daniel. I'm 35, and until last year, I thought the most messed up thing about my family was that we never talked about feelings. Turns out, the real problem was that while I was busy avoiding conversations, my older sister and my widowed father were having the kind you only see in the darkest corners of the internet, and signing documents that almost erased me from my own inheritance. This is the story of how my sister married my father in secret to get control of his money, and how a technicality in the law turned their nightmare plan into the only thing that saved me financially. My mother died when I was 19. Cancer, fast and cruel. My sister Lara was 24. She dropped everything to move back home for a while to help Dad. A while turned into 10 years. I left for university, then work. Came home for holidays. It always felt off, somehow. My sister acted more like the lady of the house than a daughter. She paid the bills, cooked, answered for my father when I asked how he was doing. "He's fragile," she'd say. "I'm taking care of everything. You focus on your life." My father, Paolo, was a quiet man, accountant like me. After Mum died, he became even smaller, hiding behind routines and let Lara speak. Over time, I let it slide. If she wanted to sacrifice herself to stay close and handle things, fine. I sent money when needed. I called every Sunday. That was my version of being a good son. When Dad turned 65, he sold his small business and retired. Between the sale, savings, and the house, he wasn't rich, but he was comfortable. "Don't worry," he told us once at dinner. "When I go, you two split everything. 50-50. You know the rule?" Lara smiled and squeezed his hand. "Of course, Dad." I believed it because I wanted to. Then he had a heart attack. I flew back home. He survived the first one, but the second one took him 3 days later. It was surreal. Hospital corridors, paperwork, a funeral we barely spoke at. A few weeks later, Lara called. "We have to see the lawyer," she said, "to deal with Dad's estate." We sat in the same office where my parents had done their first will. The lawyer opened a file, cleared his throat. "As you know, your father updated his arrangements 3 years ago," he began. I frowned. 3 years? Lara looked straight ahead. The lawyer continued. "As it stands, the house and the bulk of the liquid assets pass to the surviving spouse. The remainder, about 20% of the estate, is to be divided equally between the children." "Surviving spouse?" I asked. "You mean my mother?" "No," the lawyer said slowly. "Your father remarried." I laughed. Actually laughed. "To who?" I asked. "Because if you say Lara, that's a sick joke." Silence. Then the lawyer slid a document across the table. Marriage certificate, groom, Paulo Silva, bride, Lara Silva. I felt the room spin. "This is a mistake," I said. "This is illegal. She's his daughter." The lawyer swallowed. "It's complicated. In this jurisdiction, step relationships are regulated by degree of affinity, not just blood. There are loopholes. Your father and Lara obtained a dispensation. I advised against it." Lara finally spoke. "Don't act shocked," she snapped. "You left. I stayed. I took care of him. We grew close. It's not like we were ever just siblings after Mum died." I stared at her, the girl who used to braid my hair when we were kids. "You married our father to get his pension and the house," I said slowly. She didn't deny it. "I married him because he needed me," she insisted. "And yes, it made financial sense. Why should some future stranger wife inherit what I earned taking care of him?" "What you earned," I repeated. "What about what I earned sending money every time you said he couldn't cope?" The lawyer cleared his throat again. "There is one more thing," he said. "Your father's original will, before the marriage, had a specific clause. Even after he changed it, that clause remained for assets held in trust." He pulled another document. Any attempt by a beneficiary to gain advantage through undue influence, he read, shall result in that beneficiary forfeiting their share of the trust assets, which will instead be divided among the remaining heirs. He looked at us. Given the nature of this marriage and the secrecy surrounding it, he said carefully, a court might see grounds to argue undue influence, especially if Daniel contests. Lara went pale. Dad was of sound mind, she said quickly. We just didn't tell you because you're judgmental. Did Mum know this could happen? I asked. She's dead, Lara snapped. She doesn't get a vote. But she left one, I said quietly. In him. In that clause. I realized then that my father had seen something in human nature I had refused to see in my own family. People will do wild things for money and belonging, even if it means twisting what family is supposed to be. I had a decision to make. If I challenged the will and the marriage, it would become a case. People would talk, headlines, shame. But if I didn't, my sister stepmother would get everything. The house, most of the savings, Dad's business payout. And every time I walked past that house, I'd know I paid into a life that cut me out on purpose. I chose the uglier road. We contested. The case was brutal. Lawyers questioned my father's mental state. Neighbors testified about how close Lara and Paolo had become. One nurse mentioned seeing her climbing into his hospital bed to comfort him. I wanted to vomit. Lara cried about sacrifice, about how she'd given her youth to care for him, about how I'd moved away. My lawyer stuck to the numbers. After he sold his company, she said, Paulo's accounts show regular transfers to Lara far above normal living expenses. Shortly before the marriage, he added her to multiple accounts and removed Daniel. Immediately after, the new will was signed, favoring the new spouse. The relationship radically altered the financial outcome. The judge didn't have to decide whether what they'd done was moral, only whether it smelled like manipulation. In the end, he ruled that the marriage was legally valid, but that the trust clause on undue influence applied to Lara's share of those trust assets. Translation: she kept a smaller portion as surviving spouse of ordinary assets, but every cent in the trust, about half of the total estate, was forfeited by her and transferred to me. Because she and Dad left the clause intact, trying to protect us from hypothetical outsiders, she became the outsider on paper. I walked out of that courtroom with more money than I'd ever expected to see, and a sister I would probably never speak to again. People ask if it was worth it. Here's the truth. No amount of inheritance makes watching your sister marry your father feel worth it. But there was a bigger cost I refused to pay, letting that kind of betrayal stand as normal because it happened inside the family. So I did 3 things with the money. Paid off my own debts, bought a small apartment in my name only, set up a separate, boring investment account with one instruction in my will. Any heir who tries to manipulate me or another heir loses their share. My father once told us, money shows you who people really are. He was right. My siblings stole my inheritance by turning family into a financial weapon. A clause they forgot about made them pay for it. And I learned that sometimes the only way to honor the healthy part of your family is to stop financing the sick part.